All right, hello everybody. We are going to go ahead and get started. I believe we wanted to have Kathy Presner wanted to come on and give a quick introduction. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, since I'm not sure if she's on the phone yet, I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody to see if Kathy's here. You hear Kathy?
Yeah, I am, Brian. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I actually found you. Okay, are you there now, Kathy?
I can still hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Wonderful. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm just going to take a few minutes because I know most of us are more interested in what Brian has to show than what I have to say, and that's okay. Just wanted to kind of touch base with you. If you're here on this call today, it means probably one of a few things. It either means you are a domestic violence provider, services provider who is planning on taking some of these assessments. It might mean that your organization is the general walk-in site that's going to take the general public in when you have someone that has a housing need and do the assessment for them. Or it could mean that you're a grantee who needs to have access to the list and fill your beds with people off the prioritization list. Or lastly, it could just mean that you're a program who's interested in learning more and willing to maybe periodically do some assessments when you have the need. So not everyone on today is coming from the same perspective, and that's fine. The point of today is really to just get you familiar with what the tool looks like and how it flows, with the hopes that you get in there quickly and start using it. It's one of those things that you can go through this training today, and you're going to get a lot of good information. It is one of those things that you probably have to get your hands in it and dirty for it to really make sense and to start to really flow well for you. So I encourage you to do that. There's a training site. If you're afraid that you're going to mess something up, that's fine. We can give you access to a training site where you can put in pretend people and play around and get comfortable with it. But really it's important that you get in there and start using it. If you don't have access to the tool, or if you don't know if you have access to the tool, Javon Clark, who is from our office, LCAP, can help get you connected, and we can send out her information to all the participants after this call, and you can pass her contact information far and wide. She can get you connected, as can Brian. But again, I hope that you find the tool training useful. This will be, I think, Brian, maybe the third or fourth time you've done this training. Some of you may have been on it before, and so despite us doing some training in the past, we still really only have 6 counties of our 20 who are really using the tool. So again, get in there, start using it, try. This is the time to test it and ask questions, because if you're not aware, come January 23rd of 2018, we are all CoC and ESG grantees mandated to utilize this tool and to prioritize people for our services from this tool. And so this is the time to use it, figure out what you like, figure out what makes sense and what doesn't, so that we can work through that before January. So with that, that's really all I had to say, Brian, and thank you so much for spending the time today to do this training. We really, really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks, Kathy. No problem. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and jump into the training. I kind of created a quick, I guess, an agenda for it, so you guys get a feel of what we're going to be covering. And like kind of Kathy said, there are different people have different needs for what they're going to use within the system itself. So we're basically going to be showing you. Oh, someone grab my screen. I'm getting it back. Okay. So we're basically going to show you pretty much the whole system, and it's broken up into 2 parts. As you can see, there's going to be the beginning part, which is the coordinated entry intake and assessment part, and that's kind of the walk-in centers, the assessment centers. I know you guys are moving toward a, no wrong door approach, so more and more organizations are going to be actually partaking in the intake in the assessment tool, where we're going to cover the actual screening tool as well as the placement onto the priority list. And then we're also going to cover some coordinated intake notes to help communicate, as well as once we go through it regular style, with just regular providers, we're also going to then switch over to a DV provider and show the basic differences to allow the DV providers to enter in the same information. It'll just be more of an anonymous entry, but we can still collect and screen and score those clients. Once we do that, we may or may not, probably maybe stop for quick questions, and then we're going to jump to the prioritization list, and that's where we're going to show you, where the clients go to when they're on the prioritization list, and some things that you can do to help manage those clients, to remove them off the list, update their notes, pull them off the list, that sort of thing, to actually get them into housing. So what I'm going to do is most of this is all going to be a demo within the system itself. As Kathy said, if you need access or not sure you have access, you can go through Javon, and then she contacts myself, and I'll get you set up in HMIS. And we do have two systems. We have a training system as well as the production system, and anytime anybody needs an account, we do set up both. So that helps with learning the system. You can learn in the training system and not be afraid, and then come into the production system, and you hopefully will be much more comfortable at that step. Now, all of within ClientTrack, it's a web-based system, so you can get to it from anywhere. Anywhere you have an internet connection, and we give you a username and a password, and you're basically assigned to a specific organization or provider in the system. Now, within the system, ClientTrack kind of has broken up things into what they call work groups, and they're kind of like roles, if you will. What action are you going to do? Most regular HMIS people that are familiar with HMIS in the past, they were usually in like an agency manager or a case manager role that did, standard enrollments and services, that sort of thing. What we've actually done for your coordinated entry is we've created a special Western Continuum coordinated entry work group. And that's kind of like when you're going to be doing coordinated entry functionality, intakes, assessments, even priority list stuff, you want to make sure that you are in that work group so that you can get those functions. Now, once it loads, you're going to go straight into the client tab. There's only basically two tabs or areas within the system within this work group. And as you can see, there's the menu on this side, which basically shows what actions you can do. And then you can also, right here is almost like a toggle. And this is kind of where the system goes into like a tab carousel, where they have, the three main tabs we're looking at will be the providers tab, the clients tab, and then the home tab. The home tab is basically more case manager functions, but that's also where all your reporting is. So you kind of can think home tab is going to be my stuff, reporting. That's basically how you can think of that. The clients tab is where we're going to spend a large part, actually the whole part of the first part of the training with the intake and assessment. And as it suggests as the clients tab, that's the tab that collects all the client's data, and you do all the actions on whatever client you're working on. So you go ahead and select that if you want to switch tabs, and we'll go into switching tabs in the second part of the training, but just to familiarize yourself with how the menus work. But by default, you're going to be put right on this tab, and it's going to show you, the last client you loaded, basic demographics and everything like that. For the intakes and assessments, we have created a single function for you guys, and it's right here, and it's called Coordinated Entry Intake. Now, this is what we call a workflow that basically, when selected, is going to take you through a number of steps We tried to build it semi-intelligently to take you kind of, you know, depending on what you select and what you enter, it'll take you to different parts. And this is where, you know, if a client comes into your walk-in center or, you know, comes into your assessment center and, you know, wants to enter your coordinated entry system, this is the first part of the step, and then you want to click that button to begin collecting the information. And that's where it's going to actually start off, and you'll go into a pre-screening, and then you'll go to an intake, which is basically selecting the client, and then you'll get into the actual screening tool that we'll show you. So like I said, the first step is a pre-screening, and this is actually a really quick pre-screening. It's kind of designed to filter clients that are coming into the system, because I believe you guys, you know, or that are at risk of becoming homeless. So those are the type of clients that you want to continue on, you know, and do the screening tools on. So this is a way to quickly filter those out. You know, you can enter in, I'm going to go ahead and just make up a name, Bobbert. And you can also get a telephone number here. And then you can quickly answer, you know, are they literally homeless, yes or no? You know, are they at risk becoming homeless, or if they are anyone in their home making them feel unsafe or afraid. And this is kind of like a way of asking, are they fleeing domestic violence, or are they fleeing from any kind of unsafe housing situation? Now, depending on the questions that they answer here, at this point, none of this is automated. This is basically up to the intake worker to decide, you know, what the best step is. You have 3 buttons down here. You have save and continue, save and stop, and skip pre-screening. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and say that the answer is this. The person is actually literally homeless. So anytime the person that you're initially screening is literally homeless or at risk, you want to denote it here, and then you want to hit save and continue, because that's a way of saying, hey, I'm going to save the pre-screening, and I know that they've met the requirements. I'm going to move on in the coordinated entry system. Now, some point you may run into a client that is coming in and they are neither literally homeless or at risk. Maybe they're looking, I don't know, for some other kind of human service that doesn't meet, you know, the requirements of entering the system. Now, we still want to record that you had contact with them, because we do collect these pre-screenings as more like initial contacts. You can go ahead and say you'd answered no all the way. Then you can answer, hit save and stop. And that'll actually just record the pre-screening and you'll be done. It's kind of, like I said, a way of collecting, you know, who I contacted without actually having to go through the system with them. Now, the other one that you can do most of the time when there are new clients coming in, you are going to be selecting either, you know, save and continue or save and stop, depending on whether they're going to enter the system. The skip pre-screening is probably going to be used for return clients. Those that, you know, are callbacks or coming back into the system, you can go ahead and skip that pre-screening if they already have one, or you can actually locate previous pre-screenings. What'll come up, and you can actually look for, let me look for Bobbert. And we can see, well, he's got no pre-screenings at all. So we can go ahead and enter a new one. Now, if he does come up with a pre-screening, you are allowed to select it, and it'll actually load his previous pre-screening. And that's pretty primarily, you only want to do that when they're return calling. If they're a brand new entrance, of course, you want to enter it in fresh. So we're going to go ahead and select yes there, and the save and continue, we're going to move on. The same thing as the skip will allow you to move on as well. And that basically confirms, hey, we want them to enter the system. We want to do a, you know, we want to perform the screening tool on them. So this is the step where we're kind of doing, for those that are familiar with the system, this is kind of, you know, how we have our find add client, which is kind of like how you search for a client. If you don't find one, you create a new one. But if you do find an existing client, you want to use that existing client, of course. This is a client intake, which is kind of a combination tool that allows you to either create a new client if they're not in the system or select an existing one. And how you do that is you basically enter in their first name and their last name, and you can also enter in Social Security number or date of birth. The more information you enter, the more information is going to be included in the search. And as soon as you tab off last name or you hit this magnifying glass, the system is automatically going to perform a search within the system. So it's going to go ahead and search, and what it's going to actually do is down here, it's going to return any results that match that search. Now at this point, I'm doing Bob Bobbert. As we can see, there's no records found. That means, hey, this client is not in the system. We can go ahead and cancel out of that. And as we can see here, this client type here will show you what type of client you have when you go to the next step, which is begin screening tool. So at this point, I know Bob Bobbert's not in the system. We're going to go ahead and hit, we're going to move forward, and the system's automatically going to create a new client. Now, if under the situation where you would have found an existing client and it matches the client that you're working with, you definitely want to select them, because then what it'll do is it'll actually pull that person's information through, and you'll actually assign that, you'll start working with that client moving forward. So that helps a lot with deduplication and keeping, information and data with, a single client in the system. It'll also show you here if it's an existing client, it'll tell you, hey, you've selected someone in the system and you're going to use them going forward. The last thing before we move on to the screening tool itself is client sharing. This is a way to get verbal permission from the client to share their coordinated entry information with the other assessment centers in your continuum. Now, this is a little bit different than the signed ROI because it only relates to coordinated entry information. So this, you want to ask the client if they are willing to, share their coordinated entry information with other assessment sites, and you record their answer there. If they select yes, once they're entered, all assessment sites will have access to the client and their coordinated entry information. If you do select no, and the client, does not want to share it, you can continue and collect all the information, and they still can be put on the prioritization list. It's just if they visit another assessment center, they're not going to be able to see them. So there could be, some issues there with duplication, but it still is up to the client to whether they want to share their information. Okay, once we have selected a client or, done a search and they're, we're positive they're not in the system, we hit Begin Screening Tool, and that will basically say, hey, we're going to load the large coordinated assessment screening tool that the Western Continuum has come up with to ask a whole bunch of questions about the client to determine their score, their prioritization, and their needs in a whole bunch of areas. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to click here because by default the menu stays open, but you've got a little kind of like one of those push pins. You can actually unclick the push pin here to hide the menu, and I'm just going to do that to open this up so it so everybody hopefully can see it a little bit better. Okay, and as we can see here, while this is one single assessment, what we've done for the initial entry stage is we've broken it up into 9 different pages. Now, the first 8 of them are specifically broken down to, I guess, like assessment types, while the last page is a summary page. It'll put all the scores together and identify whether they're specific demographic categories like veteran or youth, that sort of thing. So what you're going to do is go through each of these pages, and hopefully you'll get paper forms as well to kind of get familiar with what questions you're going to be asking. But the first one is demographics, and it is, asking, it's very similar to the client profile in HMIS, where you're collecting phone number, birthday, going to go ahead and enter a birthday for this person. It also asks you things for like social security number, since they don't have that, race, ethnicity, gender, also some other citizen status, primary language. It also asks for education information, last grade completed, as well as their current school status. Graduated from high school. Now, as you go through, you answer, as many of the questions as you can collect from the clients. Once you are finished with that page, what we recommend is, what we have down here is we have two buttons down here. We have a next and we have a save. Now, if you just hit next, what it actually does is it takes you to the next page. And then you can actually hit previous and go back, because you can always go back. But the information hasn't been permanently saved. So if something happens and I were to just close this website, the information you entered would be lost. It doesn't permanently save until you next all the way through to the screen, or that's why we put this middle save button in there. What we actually recommend is after every page that you finish, you actually hit the save button. And as you can see, it takes a little bit more time because it's actually saving the entire assessment, and then hit next. So that's what you want to, save first, then next. That way, no matter what happens, if you're interrupted or where you are in the screening here, you can come back and the data you've already entered or the tab you've already got checked will be permanently saved. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that note, and I'll keep pounding on that as we go. Homeless assessment, that is the second tab, and it's basically about homeless history, also coordinated, or not coordinated, but chronically homeless information. So answer, first time you've been literally homeless, where did you sleep last night? We'll hit a shelter. And while the demographics is basic information, from the homeless assessment to the criminal background, what the system is actually doing is every question has a specific point total to it. So the system, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, is actually scoring each section based on predetermined scores. And of course, the higher the score, the higher the prioritization, the higher the needs. So as you're going, the system will automatically, in real time, update the scoring for the questions that you're answering. And a lot of them, for those that are used to HMIS, a lot of them are very similar to the HMIS. Like this one's similar to the HMIS data, or universal HMIS data assessment that asks about disabling conditions and homeless episodes, current housing status, housing options. Now, one thing I do want to show you is we do have a housing and homeless history list, where it actually wants you to list for the last 3 years their housing and homeless history. So we're going to go ahead and put in emergency shelter, and we started, let's say, 17, oops, wrong date. And what you'll do is basically it's called one of our multi fields here. So depending on how many different locations they've been at, you can check this box and actually add in the start and the end date, as well as the reason that you've left from each of those fields. Now, what the system will automatically do, because this helps try to provide a basis for total days or concurrent homeless days. Now, what we do here is we actually add up all the days from the date range that you provided, but unfortunately, because the system is looking for continuous, It's more of a helper number to help guide you with that based on the information that you've entered here. But it is important to enter for the history information as well as entering in their actual current continuous amount of days, because the person may have been homeless from 7/25 up to today 8/22. So then you would enter from 7/1 all the way up to today, which would be 31 plus 22, 53 days. So this kind of provides just a helper total for what you've entered, and it will keep updating depending on all the different numbers that, amount of entries that you've done here. All right. Now I am going to hit save first. And then next. And as it goes along, it will check, the ones that you've finished. The biggest one here is the health and safety, and this is broken into 3 different sections. It is the physical health section, which has questions based on their physical health. There is a mental health section, same thing, ask a whole bunch of questions about their mental health. And then the final section here is their substance abuse section. Kind of talks about their substance abuse history and current conditions or situation. And each of them provide a subtotal as well as a finalized total on their overall health and safety total. To give you some of the examples of some of the questions they ask is general overall physical health, whether they have insurance, and as you can see, some of the questions are dynamic. So if you answer no to pregnancy, that's all that you need to answer. But if you answer yes, it also asks for a due date. So be aware of questions intelligently popping up like that. Also ask questions on, are you currently or able to receive care, medication information. So as you answer those, the system will score them accordingly, 5 points, 10 points. Some questions are worth 0 points, but the score will show you where they lie. Now, there's also sections here where it basically describes a whole bunch of health conditions, physical health conditions. So anytime the client has any of those conditions, you basically check the box. And based on checking that box, it will score, 10 points for each box in that section, 20 points for each box checked in that section. So that's also how it adds up conditions to add to the point totals as well. And then as you can see down here, it shows total physical health. Mental health, much of the same way. Are you supposed to be taking medications and you're not? And then it also, overall mental health, we're going to put good. And then it also has the same check boxes for specific mental health conditions that will add up. And as you can see here with the 10, you can actually see the score going up as you check the box. Then we get down to substance abuse, and if you have no history of substance abuse, most of the section is closed out, but if you do hit yes, it does ask for a decent amount of information about when they last used it, abuse, treatment, any comments, that sort of thing, as well as also having the conditions listed as well. And this is the largest assessment of or screen of the assessment in the system. And then you look down at the bottom and it shows you an overall score. I'm going to go ahead and just start hitting next, even though you should save, so it saves us a little bit of time. The fourth one is domestic violence. This is whether they are a domestic violence survivor, as well as whether they're fleeing domestic violence. This one actually kind of matches the HMIS assessment. So if you answer no, you're good to go. However, if you do answer yes, then you do 2 follow-up questions, which is when the situation occurred, when did the incident occur, as well as are they currently fleeing a domestic violence situation right now. So there are sub-questions that get answered, get asked for those. And if they are yes, they do get, as you can see, there's points, and if it's recent, they get more points. And that's kind of how the whole assessment works itself. I'm going to go ahead and answer no here. Going next, veteran status. This is all about their veteran military service information. It asks, were they ever on active duty or still active duty within the armed forces of the United States? If you answer no, that's pretty much the entire survey. There's a couple extra questions about applying for benefits. But if you answer no, you're pretty much finished with it. But if they do answer yes, it actually opens up. You have to answer information about their military service history, the start and the end date, combat zones, branch of military, discharge status. I'm actually going to say Army, honorable military ID. And it actually asks some information about, what kind of military ID they have. And no. And depending on the scoring here, I believe veteran will give you 75 points, I believe, in terms of the whole scoring total for that section. And as you can see, the entire assessment is wide open, meaning, we only really require on the first screen the name and the date. Everything else, while we hope you're going to fill in as much information as you collect, there's a lot of information here, so we didn't want to have any specific data element not allow you to complete it. So you will be able to go through pages without answering every question, so that you can, finish the process, get them scored, and come back at a later time and update it as necessary, as well as not having a piece, one missing piece of information stop you from moving forward in the process. But as I said, only information that's entered will be scored and attribute to the actual points themselves. Let's see, the sixth screen is the income and benefits. Also has a little bit about employment information, whether they're employed, yes or no, as for status, number of days of the week, if they are not employed, reason for not employment. We're going to go ahead and put unable to work. It asks for types of current income. It's a lot like for those used to HMIS, the multi-select boxes. So if they have no income, you would just leave it as is with their total gross monthly household income at 0. However, if they do have income, let's say from Social Security or Veterans Disability, you can check as many of the income sources as they have. I'm going to say that these are just SSI. And these are the standard income sources from HMIS. And we're going to say the guy gets, I don't know, $275 a month SSI. Same thing for non-cash benefits. Are they eligible but have not applied? Depending on the benefits that they get, we're going to go ahead and just put food stamps or SNAP. And you can select multiple benefits, non-cash benefits, depending on what they have, just to catalog their benefit history. Has their income been verified? And the score totals will update. Household tab. This kind of is the tab that kind of tells the overall type of assessment it is, whether it's a family assessment or an individual assessment, and that's of course based on whether you're interviewing or screening a individual or a family themselves. And for an individual, if you select that or you leave this blank, it'll basically be seen as an individual screening. It really doesn't affect anything except for classifications. But all you'll need to do is enter in, number of people in household and minimum number of bedrooms. However, if they are a family, it does ask for quite a bit more information. So we're going to kind of pretend that it's a family. First thing that it asks is it does ask for, we've got one of these multi-grids again. It does ask for other household members. So any other household member that they have, and it could be, one extra kid or it could be 5 extra kids, you can go ahead and check these boxes here and enter in the new client. We're actually going to enter in we're going to pretend this Bob has a son. Actually, it's spelled Joseph. We're going to go Joe. And kind of like in the intake, once you put in a last name, it's got the magnifying glass. Once you tab off of it or click on it, it will perform another search to see if that client exists. Same rules. If he doesn't exist, you're good to go to create them brand new. If they do exist, you do want to select them. And in this case, that client will automatically be transferred from whatever household they're in straight over to your household with Bob Bobbert automatically. However, in most cases, if the main client isn't in their household members, most likely aren't either. But we still want to look just to make sure. And now we're going to go ahead, and I'm not going to enter in all this information, but just a few, just to get the age. Relationship, this is going to be a son. And no for disabling. And you can actually update some of the information from the main client as well. And as you can see here, it'll slide back and forth so that you can select, all the fields for the client. We've kind of added the main, profile-based data elements here to collect for the entire household. Once you're done there, you slide down, and there will be additional questions. It's got the people in the household, minimum number of bedrooms required. We're just going to say 1. And then it does have some scoring here based on some of the, getting those bars, based on the household makeup. So depending on certain household characteristics, you can the family can get extra points here. As if if they're a single parent with 2+ children, and any of the children are under 11 and pregnant, you will get an extra. You can check that and get an extra 20 points. So you want to make sure you cover those to get as many points as you can for the household. And as you can see here, a household, I believe, is 20 points. An individual doesn't get any. But once you're finished here, you go ahead and hit next, and the system will save, that grid as well when it actually, when it saves. So there's no special save you need to do on the household grid. The last actual assessment is the criminal background. This asks about any of their incarceration or trouble with the law history. If you answer no, you're pretty much done. You can actually add in a couple interactions they've had. I had to put that. Are you currently incarcerated, need a housing plan? No. However, if you do answer yes, it does ask for some information about your possible criminal history from the client. And you can just check one or more of those within this assessment. And we're going to go ahead and go now here. Next. Okay, once you've gone through and there's all of the 8 have the green checks and we're good to go, hopefully you're hitting save all the way through. So you've got 8 saves and 8 next. Make sure your data's in the system. When you get to the final page, there's 2 sections. The first section is kind of the identification section, where it uses information to determine whether they're chronically homeless. veteran, family, or youth. As we can see here, they are a veteran and they are a part of family. So any of those will just be, we put an X here to kind of identify that specific subpopulation. We also bring over the total number of current continuous days homeless that you entered back on the homeless assessment. And then each of the sections is reported here, and each score is broken down, and you get a total overall supportive service need. So it gives you basically a grand total for the score. At this point, you can go back and visit other screens, make edits, update information. Once you're happy with everything in the score, what you'll need to do is hit finish. That's kind of like, once you've run out of next, the finish is kind of like a final save. Where it will fully save all the information. Now, if you've, like I said before, if you've done save all the way up to the point, it's already there. It's just doing it again to make sure. Then what it does is it takes it and puts you basically into the assessment, what we kind of call edit mode. It's after it's already been fully saved and created. We no longer have the across tabs. You can actually scroll all the way down. We basically make it one big screen. However, you can jump to each section if you want to edit it nice and easily. So it kind of jumps to the almost like bookmarking within a web page within that section. So, and the main thing is this refreshes, and then what it allows you to do is you can actually make changes if you want. But what you're probably going to be doing is you're going to place them on the prioritization list. So once you've actually gone through the entire screening, you've gotten their score, this is when we are going to place them on the list, and this is where you take the score and you determine what services this client should, what their service needs are. So this is kind of our placement page or screen where they'll automatically come up as selected. Depending on the number of household members you have with them, they'll all show up in this box. You want to select them. That means they're going to be included on the priority list, and it helps with demographics. So when people look at it, they know it's not just Bob Bobbert. They'll know it's Bob and Joe Bobbert on the list side. Then depending on the score, we actually have 3 different wait lists. They're kind of like categories or prioritization list categories that you can put them on. It's either the chronic list, the homeless list, or the diversion list. Seeing that this person was not chronic, but they are homeless, I'm going to put them on the homeless list. Now just note that all of the clients on the prioritization list can be seen no matter of this classification. So this is more of a search feature than anything, so you can subgroup category clients or households on your list. Then we have the referral service needs, and we have basically 6 main categories of service needs, and they're similar to, for those again, that have experience with HMIS, they're kind of related to program types. Those are the type of services they need. You have diversion, emergency shelter, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, rental assistance, and rental assistance is also like prevention, homeless prevention, that sort of thing, and transitional housing. So depending on the scoring, the list, you need to determine what services that this client needs. So I'm going to go ahead and say, well, he's got 155 scores on the homeless. I'm going to say rapid rehousing and possibly transitional housing. Maybe he needs some service-intensive transitional while also maybe needing some rapid rehousing to get him on his feet. And you can select, as many as you want. Now, most of the time, you're probably going to select, a combination of, rapid and transitional or permanent and emergency. for short and long-term type of situations. But those are very important because those are how they're going to appear on the prioritization list, and that's how people are going to search for them. So basically, now that you're going to select rapid rehousing and transitional housing, that means those type of providers will be searching for this client on the prioritization list to try to match them up with services. So once you've determined that, you have waitlist county. This is kind of the county that the client is from. It's also kind of, you know, where the client wants, you know, their first choice for services. They want to, you know, they're in this county, they want to be served in this county. This is also a search parameter. Programs within that county and this service can help find this client. Priority, you can list them high, low, and medium. Again, that's automatic. We kind of use the Schoolborough score as a better prioritization, as we'll show you, but you can set that priority. It also, you can put in a contact phone number, an email, as well as some contacts for the client if you want. And then you select your provider, which is just going to be your agency. And in 99.9% of the times, it's going to be auto-selected for your agency. Once you have selected that, you've got those all filled out, you just hit add to prioritization list, and you are pretty much done that step. So it's kind of how you walk through it, add, you know, create the screening tool, and put them on the list. Now, the reason once it's finished, we kind of put you on what we call the screening tool assessments. This is, you know, here's Bob Bobbert's assessment, kind of shows the total score. This is where you can actually, you can review the screening tool, view pre-screening, but we actually bring you here for the coordinated intake notes. Now, these are kind of the notes. These are actually special notes that we actually developed specifically for coordinated entry, and we actually have a set specifically for you guys in the West to use that can allow providers, you know, intake organizations to enter in notes about the clients that they see. And basically everybody in the continuum, you know, that has access to coordinated entry can also see those notes. So they're very important to enter to help other people understand better, you know, besides just, you know, the scores and the services, to kind of help give a narrative for this client. So what you can do is go in and it'll show all the notes that have been added for this client, and there's intake notes. There's also notes that can be added from the community or prioritization list. They're all over the system. You can also, up here, when you click on the household, you can get to the notes here up within this section as well. So we do put these coordinated intake notes everywhere because they are very helpful. And in this example, a lot of times after you do the initial intake, what you kind of want to do is also go in and then enter in an intake note. Oops. You know, something like that, where you enter in, you know, the notes about the Bobbert family or the client themselves. Then you save the information. Now, anybody that looks at this client, even on the priority list, which we'll go to in the second half of the training, you can actually go read it. You can make new notes for it. It's a very good practice to get into use of checking and using these notes so that you guys can kind of communicate with each other on how you're providing services or what the client needs, that sort of thing. I think that is it in terms of the intake. I don't know if there's any questions here, because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and do the DV side right now. I'm not going to go as in-depth, of course, because what we've actually done is we have created a DV process for domestic violence providers that actually use HMIS for the first time. And we mirrored the process that you just saw, except since, it's laws and rules that domestic violence providers cannot enter personalized or PPI, personally protected information into HMIS, we've excluded that from basically the entire workflow. So they can enter the information, but they're basically going to track the client anonymously in the system through an ID. So that will allow them to do the screening tool, get the scoring, as well as put them on the list and help track. However, nobody's going to be able to know who this client really is, of course, except for the person, the provider that entered them, because they're going to have to use that ID to track them. So what I've done is for DV providers, we'll enter you into the system, and we'll basically, there's a specific switch that we turn on to say, hey, this is a coordinated entry DV provider. So you go through the same process when you come in. You're going to start it with coordinated entry intake, and you're going to, enter in. We're going to go ahead and put in a new client. All right, and we're going to leave the phone number blank. We're going to say literally homeless. Now, at this point, as you can see, we are actually going to use this, is anyone in your home making you feel unsafe or afraid? As I kind of mentioned during the initial pre-screening, this is the default, hey, if anybody is fleeing from a domestic violence situation, you want to select yes here. With the DV, if you're a DV provider, this switch, if you select this to yes, which is actually the default, and if you actually try to save with it no, the system will actually give you, it knows, because I actually just switched to a specific DV provider. It'll say, hey, you're a DV provider. Are you sure you want to continue by saying no? Because if you were to enter no here, it'll enter the standard way. So you definitely, if you're seeing a DV client at your organization, and this is an actual domestic violence person fleeing, you want to make sure it's yes, because that'll switch over and give you the special domestic violence intake and screening. So we're going to switch it back to yes, and we're going to go ahead and hit save and continue. As we can see here, it's going to be DV client intake, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to hide the screen again, or hide the menu again to open this back up. And at this point, you can see hopefully there's a lot of differences between the other search and this search. The other search had name, social security number, date of birth. Basically, what we've allowed here is if they're a returning client, and once you've entered a DV client in the system and you've kind of created an ID for them, you can give that ID out and have them reference that if they come back into the system. So if they do come back and say, oh, well, I'm client ID 12376, you can use that to basically search for the client in the system. However, most of the time, you're probably not going to, the client's not going to know his identifier. So we decided that the security of the client is more important than potentially having a duplicate client. So we do allow you to search by ID and phone number as well. So you can actually enter in a phone number when you initially collect them, and it will search for phone numbers that can, you know, try to help keep them remain, you know, private. And as you can see here, the search results actually don't bring back, if we just do a regular search, they don't bring back any client information either. You know, it's just identifier, age, phone number, and it does bring back Social Security number to help identify. But you can't enter in any of that information. This is all identification. So if you do happen to have that information and you can find the existing client, great, select them, use them going forward. It'll keep them hidden. However, in most cases, you are going to be creating a brand new client. So if you can't find one, that's fine. You can actually leave both of these blank if you don't want to enter in a phone number, because I know some DV providers, you know, you don't even want to enter in a phone number. That could be trackable. That is understandable as well. But once you are ready to begin, you hit Begin Screening Tool, which I'm assuming is going to, you know, you're going to probably be doing a new client 99.9% of the time. And what it does do is it actually flags it, and it says, hey, this is a domestic violent client version. As you can see, it's got pretty much the same exact tabs. The questions are exactly the same, except for the ones on the domestic tab. As you remember, hopefully, we had information like name, date of birth, Social Security, gender, ethnicity, all those kind of universal identifying information are gone. So there's no information here that can be entered or can be viewed when you're entering into information. So it's basically, you're going to be going through this assessment, putting in information to a hidden person to allow you to score and allow you to, you know, so they don't lose out on the functions of the system, to allow them to do placements and everything like that. Now, what we do is, because it is a domestic violence, we do default it to yes, so that you can go ahead and answer this question a little bit easier, that they are fleeing. We do allow you to answer the fleeing one, but since you've entered, you know, you're doing a domestic violence provider intake, odds are they are a DV survivor of some sorts, so we do do that automatically. And it's the same thing, same exact rules. You probably want to hit save and then next through each of the screens to make sure that they are saved. And as with the household, you probably want to check that. You're probably going to enter in everybody as an individual. You know, we're not going to enter in household members or anything like that. We can't enter in any information. You want to make sure you keep them as an individual, because as you can see here, we kind of name the client anonymous client is where it'll show up as. We kind of give that the moniker for those DV flag clients. Criminal background. And then once you get to the end, then it is going to have the same scoring that you had before. It's going to add it all up. You hit finish. I mean, the screening is exactly the same point-wise and information-wise, except for those first few bits at the beginning of the demographics for DV and non-DV. Then you hit, you know, once you've saved it, it kind of goes into the edit mode, and then you've got the same exact place on prioritization list. It actually works exactly the same. Now, here's where a little bit of difference comes. This is where you're going to get your client ID. So it's going to say, hey, this is client 130630, and that's just an automatic number that the system provides for the client, and that's the number that you're going to use to track this client going forward. And as you can see, it's an anonymous client where they're tracked. There's probably not going to be any household members. By default, they're going to go on the what we call the domestic violence list category. But you pretty much use the same rules, what kind of services they're looking for. We're going to say this person's looking for transitional housing, where they're being housed. We'll say Clearfield, medium list. You probably, you can enter in contact information if you want there. It doesn't relate to the client. These phone number and email actually stays with the prioritization list record. But again, your decision on what you want to disclose for these clients. Once you're done, you hit add to prioritization list, and they are put on the list. They will be seen as an anonymous client. And you have pretty much the same options here. You can probably, use coordinated intake notes as well. They will be seen as anonymous clients and anonymous households. Use the notes as well, but the notes, you probably don't want to put anything personal in the notes. The notes can be seen by pretty much everyone else in the continuum, but they are there and will work exactly the same as with non-DV clients. And really, once you go through the step here of doing the intake, the coordinated entry, assessment tool, and the placement, they're basically seen as regular client, just they don't have TPI associated with them. So I think that does it for our first section, which is the coordinated entry and assessment. Went through the pre-screening, coordinated notes, prioritization list, placement, and that's what we have a pretty good feel on. I think, like I said before, we've got about 6 people that are actively entering in assessments and doing the tools and putting people on the prioritization list. I believe we have it. I think we're up to, I know I had a few people sent to me to add to the list on Thursday and yesterday that I hope to get to today. But I think we're at around 14 or 15 agencies that have access to be able to start using the process in the system. So hopefully we can keep moving soon. I don't know if there's any questions. I know there's a chat question about what is diversion. And it's a question, I think it's related to the services, referral services. What is diversion? Diversion's kind of a service type. It's not really HMIS based. All the other ones kind of match up, but diversion is kind of what it sounds like. You're trying to, someone that's homeless, you're trying to divert from going straight into a emergency shelter. I know each community has their own definitions for those services, but a lot of times you're sending it to almost a place, a service case manager to help avoid having to use shelters or other resource tools. Maybe they'll double up with another client, with a household member. Maybe they'll figure out how to stay in their apartment. That I believe that's what the general definition of diversion is. But you want to check with the continuum to make sure that that is an adequate description of that service. I don't know if there's any more questions. There is a chat box that can be used. Should be on your menu. If you want to go ahead and enter in any chats, feel free to do so. I know we have some hand raised. Maybe we'll do that at the end. There's just a lot of people on there. When we unmute, sometimes it unmutes all and kind of gets the background noise flooded. So I will catch a couple people with their hands raised at the end. Well, I think since that's the only chat question, I'm going to go ahead and go to the second part, which is the prioritization list management. We're going to quickly show you where the list is, kind of how to manage it a little bit, as well as how to pull clients off the list. As far as the two go, this one should be rather quick because I think this is the area that we are going to be looking at doing improvements to help manage that list. So hopefully there will be some new direction changes coming up in the near future on this process. But for now, it should be fairly quick and easy. The basic idea is once people, do the assessment, they get placed on the prioritization list. Everybody in the continuum has access to this list. And depending on, your provider, say I'm a permanent supportive housing provider. I have access to this coordinated entry. I'm going to go to the list, maybe once a week, a couple times a week, and I'm going to check for permanent supportive housing clients or people on the list that need this service to see if I have an open bed, if I can give it to them. So you're basically going to the list to try to pull off clients that you can serve. Now, how do you find this list? What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go back. Right now I'm in the DV agency. I'm going to go back to my regular agency, although it shouldn't really matter. It's more comfortable in my original agency. As I showed at the beginning, we kind of have the wheels here, and for the different tabs, the prioritization list is actually on what we call the providers tab. This is actually where it is. So when you want to view it or look at it, you want to make sure you select within the wheel the providers tab. Now, the first thing that's going to come up is right here at the top, you're going to see the name of the provider that's loaded. And kind of what is a provider in HMIS? It's basically your organization. It's your wait list or prioritization list and referral arm of your organization. So pretty much every HMIS agency is their own provider. It will have the same name. That's how we've kind of set it up. Now, what you want to do, if you've entered it for the first time, you may have to go to Access Provider, and what it will do is it'll show your provider. What you want to do is select it, and it will load that provider for you. That's why I wanted to jump back into my HMIS service agency organization, because I'm familiar with my own provider, and I want to make sure that that's selected. Now, I have other providers loaded because I have admin access, so I have a whole bunch of agencies. Most of you guys have one organization you're attached to, so once you've selected it, you'll be good to go. Now, once you're on your provider, in the Provider tab, you'll have a couple folders here, which are Provider Management. The last one is Provider Reports, and right here we have a whole folder called Western Prioritization List. This is where your priority list is. And if you are set up properly within the coordinated entry system and you have your proper provider loaded, you will see this folder and you will have access to the list. So right here, this one with the little people here, prioritization list, this is kind of like a submenu where we have 2 reports that you can run for summary and details. We may not get to that. We're kind of closing in on time. But the prioritization list is where you actually click on it, and this will give you the entire list of all the clients. I'm going to close the menu here too. All the clients on the prioritization list. And they are broken up by category, whether they're DV, H is homeless, C is chronic, and I believe D is diversion. So as you can see, here's the whole big list here. You have the ability, by default, it shows the entire list. So as we can see here, through the paging, there's currently 337 active people on the list. Now we have a whole bunch of ability to filter this list by service needs, by subpopulations, veteran, youth, fleeing, as well as by county. So the basic idea is, providers are going to come into this list on a daily, weekly, maybe when you have openings. Hey, I've got, I'm in rapid rehousing. I've got $12,000 that I have for a family. Come to the list. See if you can find a matching family. And all of them are set up where the highest screening is on top. That's how it's kind of prioritized. So let's say you're, hey, I'm a rapid rehousing provider within Lawrence County. So here I'm going to show, and let's say I'm also looking for veterans, because that's my service type. As you can see here, the list can give you 4 specific clients on that list that you can look at and determine if that could be a client that you could serve. What I'm actually going to go do I'm going to look at my client that I just entered so I don't show any inadvertent information over the internet, over the WebEx. Let's say I was a Lawrence County searching for rapid rehousing, and Bob Bobbert is one of the people on the list. As you can see here, it shows basic information about the client. It's got, the household size, the screening type, screening score, services, status, and as well as the last date that those coordinated intake notes were entered. What you can do is over here, you've got a bunch of actions over here that can be done. Now, one of the first things you probably want to do is you want to look into coordinated intake notes and take a look at to see if anybody's entered any relevant notes on that client. You can also enter in notes as well, and I can show you that in a second. But where you can also look further into the client is review their prioritization list record. So this basically means, hey, this is summary information. I want to see the, full deal. So it comes in, shows all their information. Where they're from, that sort of thing. And then down here, it basically shows, here's the services, and right here shows any kind of like status, any kind of like referrals or contacts that might have been made. So one thing where you can also look up here, it will actually list their screening tool. So if you want a little bit more in-depth look at their actual screening tool, you can actually load it right here through their record. Maybe you're looking for a specific score or information, but it is there and available. You can also look at referrals, see if this guy has any referrals that have been sent and received, see if anybody has been accepted. If not, what you can do down here is probably how it's going to go is you're looking at it and you go, okay, Bob Bobbert might be a person that I have a spot for. So you're probably going to contact that client. So what you want to do is anytime you contact the client, you want to enter in a note that, hey, I contacted him. And it'll actually enter in the information of who you are. It'll enter, this is from Brian Miller at my HMIS agency, how you did it, called client for called clients coming into office for eligibility requirement review. May have spot for RH. So then anybody else that comes across this client can look at the coordinated intake notes and go, oh, okay, well, HMIS service agency just called for them, so let me skip to the next person, or maybe I can reach out to them. Those are some rules that we're going to have to go over, you know, put together to figure out the most efficient way to do that, just showing the tools that are in the system. Now, at this point, let's say that they, you know, reach them, you know, reach the client. They had the eligibility meeting, and hey, I've got a spot for them. You know, I'm going to enroll them into, you know, my rapid rehousing program or whatever it is. What you can do is actually go to the list, and we've got service acceptance. This is basically an import option that basically says, hey, I'm taking this client and I'm pulling him off, you know, I'm pulling him off the list for a service I can provide. So if you click this button, what it actually does is it gives you a little accept from prioritization list. It basically says, hey, for rapid rehousing, I am going to provide this service. Now, this is kind of like an end state thing. You don't want to do this if you're still talking to him or you're still not sure. This is basically, hey, I am going to give this guy, you know, or this person rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing services. That's the step when you're going right here. Then you go accept from list. Now, at this point, you're good to go. You've actually imported the client, so your agency now has full access to not only the coordinated entry information, but this client's information, similar to an import, if you're familiar with the global, you know, import stuff in the system. And what it actually does is it gives you an option to visit the client's dashboard, you know, to view their demographics or look at them, or actually start an enrollment right there. And that's one of the things that we recommend, because what you want to do is when you pull someone off, you actually want to start an enrollment. And the system will actually, for those familiar with HMIS, will begin the actual enrollment workflow. Or to come in and ask, you know, ROI, it'll go through the full enrollment. And I'm not going to actually go through that here. To actually place that client within the program itself. Now, I'm going to go back to return the prioritization list. Now I'm going to look up Bobbert. Okay. Now, at this time, once you have pulled him off the list, of course, you're going to add a note about it. In-person appointment, ability test, enrolled in RH. The notes are going to be really important, especially at the beginning, and so we streamline rules and everything like that to make sure everybody's on the same page. Then we're going to go back into the review record. And as we can see, if we scroll all the way down for this Bob Bobbert client, we can see, if anybody looks at it, this rapid rehousing, we can see that the referral was accepted and the service was provided. Now, at this point, two things can happen. The client has rapid rehousing services, so he's most likely housed. He's ready to, you know, ready to be moved off the list. He either can enroll them into a program like I did. Now, I canceled the enrollment, but once a client gets enrolled in HMIS, the system will actually automatically check to make sure the client, you know, check to see if the client's on your prioritization list. If it is and it matches with the service he needs, once the enrollment is finished, the system will automatically close this client off the wait list. So it'll actually mark the wait list, as placed, closed, and it'll actually mark what program the person got enrolled into. So that's why it's important to actually, once you do the service acceptance and you've found the client, finish the actual enrollment in HMIS, and you don't have really anything else to do except for go back and enter in some intake notes, telling people, hey, we're good, we finished with this client. However, if you haven't enrolled them, or it's for a different type of service or program that if you don't have an HMIS, you do have the ability to update this record manually. And it's all based on this status. There's basically 5 statuses. Now, when a prioritization record is created, it starts out as new. And it basically is new. It stays that way until it is actually changed by either a person or, closed out by the system itself. So you have reviewed, which can also be changed, like when, at the point in time when I was reviewing this person for rapid rehousing services, you could have changed it to reviewed to kind of let people know that, hey, someone's looking at them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean other people should skip that person, but it's just to make people aware that, hey, someone is looking at this client. Maybe if it's, someone that's reviewing the list or, scrubbing the list to help give them some indication. Now, the last 3 statuses are basically outcomes. The placed is basically means a positive housing outcome. That means the client was on the list, for housing, and we have found him housing, or he has found, or they have found housing, and it's a positive, positive goal, they were placed. Once you've done that, if you do that manually, you can hit placed, and it actually asks for a destination. What kind of program did they go into? And here I'm going to put rapid rehousing. Now, again, if I would have finished that enrollment, the system would have actually been smart enough to go through and change this to placed and placed in rapid rehousing. So the enrollment actually is able to close out these records for you. Just to kind of show you manually, if you need to, if you want to show a positive outcome, that's how you do it. Now, for the negative outcomes, we actually have 2 of them, closed and turned away. And that basically denotes a negative outcome, or at least a non-positive outcome, meaning, we didn't get placed in permanent housing, but we had to remove him from the list or close him out from the list. And here's a list of reasons. Maybe it could be, we put him on the list, and then when we finally got down to it and did eligibility on him, either his eligibility, his requirements changed, or maybe, something changed and he's no longer meets the criteria for the system. That I can see that happening. Maybe he declined further assistance. Maybe the guy disappeared. You called him back 10 times. You haven't heard from him in 30 or 40 days. You probably, after a certain amount of time, you're going to close them off the list. And these are just what I kind of created by default. We can expand upon, change these, make these better. I just wanted some extra information for closing out clients or placing them for positive and negative outcomes. So once you've done that, you hit save. And if we go ahead and do a search on Bobbert, we can see no records are found, because by default, the type, when you first load it, and pretty much by default, it's only going to show you active prioritization list records. That means people that are new or reviewed, they haven't been touched and they still need, housing services. However, you can always flip over to historical, So anybody that was placed or closed out or turned away, basically that had an outcome, they don't disappear. We actually move them to the historical section. So you can always go back, maybe you made a mistake or maybe you want to review this client later. They'll always be there under the historical section for you to review. So that is kind of it in a nutshell from the management perspective. You know, we've got lots of tools here to search, you know, county-wise, subpopulation-wise, service-wise, to try to filter in on, you know, the types of clients that you might be able to serve as providers, and then basically work your way through, you know, finding clients, adding notes to contact them, and trying to find programs, you know, your programs that might be able to match their housing needs, and using those coordinated intake notes to really help communication between all parties, because that's going to be the best way to take a look at, you know, for two or more providers to work together going off of it. Okay, I think that's it. I know we've got about a minute left. I think we do have some questions here. I'm going to go ahead and take a look. Okay. It says, one of the questions says, the intake assessment, health, income geared to head of household and not family members? Yes, I believe it is. Most of the questions are geared towards the head of household and not specifically family members. But the ones that like the household tab, you know, if they're looking for family member information, they will specifically state it. If not, it's about the person you're actually interviewing. Is the training accessible online? We are actually recording this training right now. My hope is to get it converted and available to everyone as soon as possible. We are also having a training next Tuesday, which should be very similar. So you can come to that one as well. But yeah, we're getting resources out so you guys can get videos of this to watch at your leisure. Another question, how do you prevent multiple agencies from contacting the same client? Right now, we don't. The best way to do that is through the contact, you know, the coordinated intake notes. And of course, we want to try to make improvements through the management list system, maybe even look into using referrals of that sort to make it smarter, you know, make it easier. But for right now, the best way is the coordinated intake notes and, you know, keeping in communication with other providers, especially the providers that might help the same clients. Is there any guidance on determining the wait list priority high, medium, or low? That drop-down list, that is subjective based on the interviewer's opinion. And to be honest, it's a setting that's been there. It wasn't specifically asked for your Western prioritization list. It was just came with the system. So it is definitely based on the interviewer's opinion and pretty subjective as of now. Okay, let me see, I don't know if Kathy wants to say anything, or I'm going to look for some hands raised. Okay, I got a hand raised. Sharon Fuller has her hand raised, and I'm going to try to unmute you. I think you're unmuted. Sharon Fuller, did you have a question? Okay, I guess not. Let me, okay. I think you're unmuted, Kathy. I don't know if you want to say anything.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Okay. Just thank you, everyone, for participating today. I know that there are still some pieces of information that we don't have for you. Javon, you'll probably all be hearing from her in the next few months. She's really going to be working with our subcommittee to create policies around a lot of decisions that are subjective right now. So one of the things that Brian had mentioned was that high, medium, and low priority. Expect to see some guidance from us coming out over the next few months. And if you have some opinions about that, you're more than welcome to join in on those subcommittee calls or conversations so that we can make the system work as best as we can for everybody. This is just sort of the beginning of our training. We will continue to be putting out information, so keep your ears and eyes open for documentation that you might get from Javon, or you might get it straight from Diana T. Myers around coordinated entry and what does it mean for you. We know that it's a familiar term, but it might not be fully implemented in your community, and it's going to take some working in each community to really make it work well. So we do understand that. We're not blind to that. It is a process, but we're here along the way with you to get that up and running in your community and working smoothly for you. I don't have any further. I don't know if Javon's on, if there was anything she wanted to say.